Michael Torres opened his resignation letter for the third time that week, his hands shaking as he reread words he never thought he'd write. After 15 years of dedicated service to Lincoln High School, I hereby submit my resignation, effective immediately. He hadn't signed it yet. Part of him still hoped things would get better. But after 3 months of systematic bullying by his own students, Michael knew hope was a luxury he could no longer afford. This is the story of how one teacher's worst nightmare became the moment that changed everything, not just for him but for thousands of educators facing the same invisible battle. And it started with a video that went viral for all the wrong reasons. Michael Torres had been teaching mathematics at Lincoln High School in Philadelphia for 15 years. He wasn't the cool teacher who let students get away with anything. He wasn't the pushover who gave easy grades. He was the teacher who believed every student could learn calculus if someone just took the time to explain it properly. The teacher who stayed after school tutoring kids who were failing. The teacher who spent his own money on supplies when the school budget ran out. He was also the teacher who held students accountable, who gave grades based on work, not popularity, who refused to pass students who hadn't earned it, even when parents complained. And in the age of social media, that made him a target. It started small. Eye rolls, whispered comments, students arriving late to class deliberately. Michael handled it the way veteran teachers do, with patience, consistency, and the belief that respect is earned through fairness. But then the videos started. Someone recorded Michael's voice cracking during a lesson when he was explaining a complex equation. They edited it, added mocking music, and posted it on TikTok with the caption, "Mr. Torres can't even teach without crying." The video got 50,000 views in 2 days. Then came the challenges. Students would deliberately give wrong answers, film Michael's frustrated reactions, and post compilations titled, "Making Mr. Torres Lose His Mind, Part 5. Each video got thousands of likes. Comments called him the worst teacher ever, boring, a joke. The administration noticed. Parents complained that their children's viral videos were being censored when the school asked for them to be taken down. The principal called Michael in for a meeting about classroom management issues. Michael tried to explain. These were students who had failing grades because they didn't do the work. Students he'd held accountable. Students who preferred making him a meme to learning mathematics. But viral videos don't care about context. They only care about content. The bullying escalated. Students would cough loser when he walked down the hallway. They'd submit homework with his face photoshopped onto ridiculous images. They'd give him fake positive reviews online, then reveal it was a joke in the comments. They'd film him eating lunch alone in his classroom and mock his loneliness. Michael, who had once loved teaching, began to dread walking into school. He lost 15 pounds in 2 months. He stopped sleeping. His wife Carmen begged him to quit. "They're destroying you," she said. "No job is worth this." But Michael had been a teacher his entire adult life. Teaching wasn't just what he did, it was who he was. How do you walk away from your identity? The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October. Michael was teaching a calculus class when 3 students in the back row started filming him while loudly discussing how pathetic he was. When Michael asked them to stop disrupting class, one student, a senior named Tyler Johnson, whose failing grade Michael had refused to change, stood up and delivered a monologue, clearly rehearsed for maximum viral impact. "You know what, Mr. Torres? You're a joke. Nobody respects you. Nobody likes you. You're a terrible teacher and everyone knows it. The only reason you still have a job is because nobody else wants to work at this dump." The class erupted in laughter. Phones captured every second. Michael stood at the board, marker in hand, frozen. Then he did something he'd never done in 15 years of teaching. He walked out of the classroom mid-lesson, went to his office, and wrote that resignation letter. But he didn't submit it. Not yet, because that night, his wife Carmen did something that would change everything. She'd been watching the viral videos, all of them. She'd seen her husband mocked, degraded, and turned into entertainment by teenagers who didn't understand the damage they were causing, and she was done staying silent. Carmen wrote a letter to the Ellen DeGeneres Show, not a professional, polished letter, but a raw, honest cry for help from a wife watching her husband break under the weight of public humiliation. "My husband Michael has been a teacher for 15 years. He's helped hundreds of students learn, graduate, and succeed. But now students are bullying him on social media because he refuses to pass them without earned grades. The viral videos show a joke. What they don't show is the man who comes home crying, who's lost 15 pounds, who's written a resignation letter he can't bring himself to sign. Please, if you can help, if you can remind people that teachers are human beings who deserve respect, maybe my husband will remember why he loved teaching in the first place." Carmen sent the email at midnight on a Wednesday. On Friday morning, her phone rang. "Mrs. Torres, this is Rachel from the Ellen DeGeneres Show. Ellen read your letter, and she wants to invite your husband to be in the studio audience. Can he come on Monday?" Carmen almost said no. Michael was fragile. Putting him in a room full of strangers felt cruel, but Rachel said something that changed her mind. Ellen wants to remind him and everyone watching that teachers matter. Monday afternoon, Michael sat in the third row of the Ellen DeGeneres Show studio, wearing the same tie he'd worn in those viral videos. Carmen had convinced him to come, though he still didn't know why. He just knew he needed a break from the classroom, where students saw him as content instead of a person. The show started normally. Ellen came out dancing, doing her usual opening. Michael tried to smile, to be a good audience member, but his mind kept returning to the resignation letter still unsigned on his desk. Then Ellen said something that made Michael's heart stop. "We have a teacher in our audience today. His name is Michael Torres, and he teaches mathematics at Lincoln High School in Philadelphia. Michael, can you stand up, please?" Michael stood on shaking legs, confused. How did Ellen know he was here? This was supposed to be anonymous audience attendance. "Michael has been teaching for 15 years, Ellen continued, walking toward the audience. "He's the teacher who stays after school for tutoring, who spends his own money on supplies, who believes every student can learn if someone just takes the time to teach them properly." The audience applauded politely, but Michael could see in Ellen's face that something bigger was coming. Michael is also the teacher who's been systematically bullied by his own students for the past 3 months. Students who film him, mock him, turn him into viral content because he holds them accountable for their grades. The studio went silent. This wasn't the usual Ellen Show content. This was raw and uncomfortable. "We've all seen the videos. I've watched them, and I want to show you something." A screen descended behind Ellen, and then Michael's worst nightmare appeared. A compilation of the viral videos. Him being mocked, him being laughed at, him trying to teach while students deliberately disrupted class. The video that destroyed his dignity, now playing on national television. Michael wanted to run, wanted to disappear. Carmen reached for his hand and held it tight, but then the video changed. Ellen's producers had done something the students never bothered to do. They'd interviewed Michael's former students, not the current seniors who bullied him, but students who'd graduated years ago. Students whose lives Michael had changed. One former student, now a sophomore at MIT, appeared on screen. "Mr. Torres is the reason I'm studying engineering. I was failing math junior year. He stayed after school with me 3 days a week for 6 months until I understood. He never gave up on me." Another student, now a teacher herself. "When my mother died senior year, Mr. Torres let me eat lunch in his classroom every day because I couldn't handle the cafeteria. He never asked questions, just gave me space to grieve and a safe place to exist." One after another, former students shared stories of Michael's kindness, dedication, and impact. Students who had graduated before social media made teachers into memes. Students who remembered that behind the boring math teacher was a human being who had changed their lives. The compilation ended. The studio was completely silent. Michael was crying. Carmen was crying. Ellen walked over to Michael in the audience. "Come up here," she said gently. "Please." Michael walked to the stage like he was walking through water. Everything felt distant, surreal. Ellen guided him to the center of the stage and just stood with him for a moment. "Michael, do you have a resignation letter written?" Ellen asked. Michael nodded, unable to speak. "Are you going to submit it?" "I don't know," Michael whispered. "I love teaching, but I can't keep going to work feeling like a joke." Ellen turned to the audience. Show of hands. How many of you had a teacher who changed your life? Every hand in the studio went up. 300 people. Every single one acknowledging a teacher who mattered. "Teachers aren't jokes," Ellen said, her voice firm. "Teachers are the people who shape the future, and we need to remember that." But what Ellen did next would shock Michael and everyone watching, more than anything that had happened so far. "Michael, I want to show you something else," Ellen said. "Your principal is here, Principal Davis from Lincoln High School. Can you come out, please?" Principal Margaret Davis walked onto the stage. Michael's stomach dropped. This was it. He was being fired on national television. But Principal Davis didn't look angry. She looked ashamed. "Michael," she said, her voice shaking, "I failed you. When you came to me about the bullying, I prioritized avoiding conflict over protecting you. I let students turn you into content instead of holding them accountable. That was wrong." She pulled out a folder. "I've reviewed everything. The students who created and shared those videos violated multiple school policies. Tyler Johnson, who publicly berated you in class, has been suspended for 2 weeks and removed from your class permanently. The other students involved have been disciplined according to their level of participation. Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. But more importantly, Principal Davis continued, I want to apologize publicly for failing to protect you, and I want to ask you, on behalf of Lincoln High School, to please not resign. We need teachers like you. Ellen wasn't finished. There's one more thing. Michael, you're not going to believe who else is here. The students appeared on stage. Not Tyler Johnson and the bullies, but the former students from the video. The MIT sophomore, the teacher, others who had flown to Los Angeles just to tell their teacher, in person, what he meant to them. One by one, they hugged Michael, told him how he'd changed their lives, reminded him why he'd become a teacher in the first place. But the moment that broke everyone came from the youngest former student, a freshman at Temple University named Maya Rodriguez. She had been quiet throughout, standing at the back of the group. When it was her turn to speak, she walked up to Michael with tears streaming down her face. Mr. Torres, you probably don't remember this, but when I was a sophomore in your Algebra 2 class, I was planning to drop out. My dad had lost his job, we were about to lose our apartment, and I couldn't see the point of school anymore. Michael's eyes widened. He remembered Maya. Quiet girl, brilliant mind, suddenly stopped doing homework halfway through the year. You noticed I stopped turning in assignments, and instead of failing me, you asked me to stay after class. You didn't ask what was wrong. You just said, Maya, I know you're capable of this work. What do you need to succeed? And then you listened. Maya's voice broke. You helped me get a job tutoring middle school kids. Paid work. You set it up, connected me with families, gave me a reference. That job kept my family in our apartment. It kept me in school. And now I'm at Temple on a full scholarship studying to be a social worker, because you showed me that helping people matters more than anything else. She pulled something from her pocket, a crumpled piece of paper, clearly carried and reread many times. You gave me this note after I got my acceptance letter to Temple. It said, Maya, I always knew you were destined for greatness. Thank you for not giving up. Mr. Torres, you saved my life, and I'm not going to let viral videos make you forget that you save lives every single day. Michael broke. Not the quiet crying he'd been doing, but full, body-shaking sobs. Maya hugged him. Then all the former students surrounded him, and then Principal Davis joined, and then Ellen, and then the entire studio audience was on their feet. This wasn't entertainment, this was healing. When Michael could finally speak, he looked at Ellen and said something that would become a rallying cry for teachers across the country. I'm not a content creator. I'm not a viral moment. I'm a teacher. And teaching is the most important job in the world. Ellen's response was immediate. You're absolutely right, and we're going to make sure people remember that. She pulled out an envelope. Michael, this is from our partners at Donors Choose, Shutterfly, and several donors who were moved by your story. It's $50,000 for your classroom. New technology, new materials, whatever you need. Because teachers shouldn't have to spend their own money to do their jobs. The audience erupted, but Ellen held up her hand. And one more thing. We're launching the Teachers Are Humans campaign. Starting today, we're asking people to share stories of teachers who changed their lives, not to mock teachers, but to honor them. Because teachers like Michael deserve respect, not ridicule. Within 24 hours of the episode airing, Titan's Teachers Are Humans was trending worldwide. Teachers shared their own stories of student bullying. Students shared stories of teachers who'd changed their lives, and the viral videos that had destroyed Michael's dignity were flooded with comments defending him. Tyler Johnson, the student who'd berated Michael in class, issued a public apology video. It was awkward, clearly influenced by his parents, but it was something. I thought it was funny to make videos. I didn't think about Mr. Torres as a person. I was wrong. Michael didn't accept the apology immediately. Forgiveness takes time, but he did something that defined his character. He didn't demand Tyler be expelled. He's 17, Michael told Principal Davis. He made a mistake. Let him learn from it. Michael returned to Lincoln High School, 3 weeks after the Ellen episode aired. He expected awkwardness, maybe more hostility. Instead, he found something different. Students had decorated his classroom. Signs that read, "Best Teacher Ever," and "Thank you, Mr. Torres," covered the walls. His desk had flowers, cards, and notes from students apologizing, thanking him, acknowledging what they'd put him through. One note, from a quiet junior named Sarah Chen who'd never participated in the bullying, said simply, "Mr. Torres, I was afraid to defend you because I didn't want to become a target too. I'm sorry I was a coward. You deserved better from all of us." Michael taped that note to his desk, not as a reminder of pain, but as a reminder that silence in the face of bullying is something even good people struggle with, and that acknowledging our failures is the first step toward being better. The transformation wasn't immediate or universal. Some students still didn't like Michael's strict grading. Some still thought he was boring, but the culture had shifted. Bullying a teacher was no longer seen as funny content. It was seen as what it always was, cruelty. 1 year after the Ellen episode aired, Michael Torres was named Pennsylvania Teacher of the Year. At the ceremony, he gave a speech that every teacher in America needed to hear. "I almost quit. I almost walked away from the only job I've ever loved because I couldn't handle being treated as content instead of a person. But quitting would have meant those students were right, that I was a joke, that my work didn't matter, and I refused to let cruelty define my calling." He paused, composing himself. "To every teacher watching this who's been mocked, filmed, turned into a meme, you are not a joke. You are shaping the future. You are changing lives. And the students who film you for likes will someday realize what the rest of us already know. Teachers are the most important people in society." The auditorium erupted. Teachers across the state stood in recognition of their own struggles, their own resilience, their own decision to keep showing up even when it hurt. Ellen DeGeneres attended the ceremony. When Michael's award was announced, she was the first to stand, applauding a teacher who'd chosen to stay in a profession that had nearly broken him. Today, 5 years later, Michael Torres still teaches at Lincoln High School. Tyler Johnson, the student who bullied him, graduated and went to community college. 2 years later, he returned to Lincoln to apologize in person, sober, genuine, and ashamed of the teenager he'd been. Michael accepted the apology this time. "We all make mistakes," he said. "The question is whether we learn from them." Maya Rodriguez graduated from Temple and is now a social worker helping at-risk youth in Philadelphia. She visits Michael's classroom once a year to talk to students about resilience, about overcoming obstacles, about the teachers who save lives without ever making the news. The $50,000 from Ellen transformed Michael's classroom. New technology means students can visualize complex equations in ways textbooks never could. New materials mean hands-on learning, and the remaining funds started a scholarship for Lincoln High students pursuing STEM degrees, funded by a teacher who almost quit but chose to stay. The resignation letter Michael wrote still exists. He keeps it in his desk drawer, not as a reminder of weakness, but as proof of survival. On particularly hard days, when students are difficult or grading feels endless, he pulls out that letter and remembers how close he came to walking away. Then he looks at the wall of his classroom, where Maya's note still hangs. "You save lives every single day." Ellen DeGeneres didn't just give Michael money that day. She gave him something more valuable: public recognition that teachers are human beings who deserve respect, that viral culture has real victims, that mockery has consequences. The Teachers Are Humans campaign lasted 6 months on Ellen's show. Every week she featured a teacher doing extraordinary work. Every week she reminded her audience that behind every boring teacher is a human being who chose one of the hardest, most important jobs in existence. Michael Torres almost became another casualty of viral culture, another teacher driven out by students who saw him as content rather than a person. But he survived, and in surviving, he became a symbol for every teacher fighting the same battle. Teaching is still hard. Students still film classrooms. Social media still exists. But Michael's story changed the conversation. It reminded people that teachers aren't jokes. They're the people who make everything else possible. And sometimes, just sometimes, a talk show host can use her platform to remind the world that the people shaping our future deserve better than to be turned into memes. Michael Torres kept teaching. And in doing so, he proved that resilience isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to rebuild even when everything tells you to walk away.